Welcome to another episode of NIF Australia's Israeli election preview. With 3 months until the election, there's still a lot of political posturing and shifting allegiances. Following the dissolution of the Zionist Union Party, Tzipi Livni and Yair Lapid have been in advanced talks about running on a joint ticket. Haaretz reported that Lapid feels he needs to shore up support among centre-left voters, having tried for the last 3 years to gain support mostly from the centre-right without seeing much improvement in his overall electability. Meanwhile, former Defence Minister Moshe Yaalon, who was fired by Prime Minister Netanyahu 2 years ago, has called for a united bloc with Benny Gantz and his Israel Resilience Party. Yaalon's Telem party is currently polling below the electoral threshold, but having both former IDF chiefs of staff running together could be a stronger force to take on Benjamin Netanyahu. We also wanted to bring you two interesting developments in the polls. The first is a matchup for preferred Prime Minister between Benjamin Netanyahu and his two main challengers. As you can see, Netanyahu has a significant lead over Yair Lapid, while he's only 3 points up against Benny Gantz. Though that result hasn't shifted the number of seats all that much, with Likud still in a commanding lead over both Lapid and Gantz's parties. The same poll also asked whether Israelis believe the Prime Minister when he says the ongoing corruption investigations are out to get him. Almost half of all Israelis, though only 38% of Jewish Israelis, don't believe that the investigations are only serving as a way to drive him out of office, while almost a fifth of Israelis are yet to make up their mind. But the main focus of this episode is a quick introduction to Israel's electoral system. Effectively, the whole country operates, as we'd think about it in Australia, as a single electorate. Before the election, the parties submit a list of candidates, and then depending on the number of votes the party gets, their members are elected. You can see here the lists of Likud, Yesh Atid and Meretz, which ultimately elected 30, 11 and 5 members. As in most countries around the world, voting in Israel is optional. The last election saw a spike in turnout not seen since the late 1990s. There's also a minimum threshold that parties need to cross in order to be elected at all. One thing this ensures is that all parties will have at least a few members, making it a little bit easier to negotiate coalitions. That threshold is 3.25%, and it becomes particularly relevant for the Joint List, a united group representing the interests of Palestinian citizens of Israel. Before the 2015 election, the threshold was just 2%. And the move to increase the threshold was widely viewed as an attempt to limit the representation of the Arab-Israeli partners in the next Knesset, because only one was able to get enough votes in 2013 to meet the new target. At the time, then Labour leader Isaac Herzog boycotted the Knesset vote and labelled it steps of hatred and exclusion and trying to push certain parties to the sidelines. After the government changed the threshold requirement, a number of parties decided it would be more effective to combine their resources and run as a joint party rather than risk falling below the new threshold. Hadash, the joint Jewish-Arab secular party, whose leader Ayman Odeh became the leader of the Joint List, Balad, an Arab nationalist party, Ta'al, and the United Arab List, an Islamist party. Altogether, these parties represent radically different agendas, everything from secularism and support for two states to Islamism and anti-Zionism. Thinking about Jewish parties in Israel, it would be like Meretz and the Jewish Home Party having to run together just to scrape past the higher threshold. Ultimately, despite the Netanyahu's governments to limit representation from the Arab parties, they actually received about 100,000 extra votes and 2 additional seats in the current Knesset, while the small, extreme right-wing Jewish party Yachad failed to cross the barrier. Ahead of this year's elections, however, some changes have already been mooted. Controversial Knesset member Hanin Zoabi has said she won't be standing for elections for the Balad party. Zoabi is probably best known for participating in the 2010 flotilla to Gaza, as well as attempts to disqualify her for running in elections, and a 6-month suspension she received from speaking in the Knesset following an investigation on charges of incitement. Another Palestinian Israeli leader, Ta'al Knesset member Ahmed Tibi, announced his party won't be running as part of the Joint List in this election. That's all we have for this episode. Stay tuned to our Facebook and Twitter pages. We're posting updates from the parties and candidates every day. Thanks for watching.